Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you would rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Bussino?
Here.
Trustee Krasinski?
Here.
Trustee Nevers?
Present.
Trustee Smith?
Here.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Here.
Clerk Posey here. Supervisor Dunn?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the agenda items with any corrections or deletions or additions. Ms. Posey?
Yes, Madam Supervisor, we have a proposed add-on B1, request for model bond release, lots 13 and 20 of Villa Palmetto subdivision. Proposed add-on 11A, request to purchase computer software from CDWG. Proposed add-on 26, request to approve agreement to permit recording of condominium master deed. Those are all the proposed add-ons I have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, at this time, I would like to postpone items number 24 and 25. It's in mutual agreement with the Ethics Committee. We are working on some finalizations of that ordinance.
24 and 25?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I got something to say about that. I'm glad to see that Ms. Goodhue and Ms. Nevers are giving the impression that they're working towards an ethics ordinance. It's something I've been working on with residents, employees, and board members since 2017. Kudos to you, both of you, for finally trying to push this to the forefront. I do have some concerns on how and why this is not being voted on tonight. On April 17th, during a special board meeting with the Ethics Committee, Ms. Goodhue said many things, including these words to the Ethics Committee. At this time, we thank you for all your help. You are an advisory committee. I think you've done a good job of doing that. So I think at this point, the board can take it from here. Since then, Ms. Goodhue, our board voted on May 8th to establish tonight as the night we vote on the ethics ordinance. That affirmed your words in that April 17th meeting that the board was taking it from here. You completely ignored your words in the vote the board took in order to once again delay the ethics vote. You held a meeting at Ms. Nevers' house that was attended by you, Ms. Nevers, and 3 members of the Ethics Committee. This meeting was not approved by the board. I was not invited. Not sure Ms. Posey, Ms. Smith, Mr. Krasinski, or Ms. Dunn was invited. This township has issues with transparency. Holding a meeting at a trustee's house with no announcement to the public is not transparent. At least when I held 2 ethics ordinance meetings, I arranged for it to happen at a public library and I invited residents. Now these secret meetings have led to a delayed vote. I've heard so many excuses, including our legal counsel delayed the review of the ordinance. I'm again forced to take pause and process these developments. I'm happy if these developments are leading to ethics ordinance. What I would like to know right now is when are we going to vote on an ethics ordinance?
Anything else?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have another item another issue with the agenda, that item number 27 be brought into open session, as I do not think this meets the elements of MCL 15.268H.
Anything else? Are there any motions?
Hearing nothing, I will make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Your amendments or Mr. Buzzino's amendment?
Are we doing them all together, or do you want to do them?
I think it's,
I'm just looking for
I think
direction. Which one you want?
The agenda as we've amended publicly, all of them.
Madam Chair, that does not include what Mr. Bussino's talking about at all. This is just on the 3 items that Ms. Posey's talking about. He was just making a statement on what he thought. And that's
He made a
it.
No, I asked for item 27 to be brought into open session.
Right.
I don't feel it meets closed session requirements.
You can.
I guess when we get to that agenda item, we could have a roll call vote if we want to do that. If we want to keep that in closed session, then, closed session votes closed session items require us to take a vote. So I guess we could take a vote at that point, but
Would you clarify your motion, please?
I would like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the 3 proposed add-ons and in addition to the 2 postponements, and also to include trustee Bussino's request to have 27 moved to open session.
Is there support?
Support.
All in favor? Let's have a roll call vote on that, please.
Okay, Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
yes.
Trustee Kuzminski?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
No.
Supervisor Dunn?
No. Motion carries. Next, we will have approval of the bills. As usual, there are 2 bill runs. If anyone wishes an item removed, please indicate so at this time.
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, if there are no issues with any of the bills on either run, I move that we approve both.
Motion by Ms. Nevers,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue, to authorize payment of both bill runs. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. The approval of the previous meeting minutes from June 12th are before you. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes?
Madam Chair, seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes from June 12th, 2019.
Motion by Ms. Posey,
Support.
supported by Ms. Smith, to approve the minutes from June 12th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda items. These are routine matters that come before the board. If you wish an item for discussion on the consent, please indicate so at this time.
Madam Chair, hearing none, I would move on the consent agendas as presented.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Kuzminski, seconded by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next, we have public comments. This is on agenda items only. Please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and remember there's a 3-minute time limit.
Jim Jelius, items 24 and 25. As chairman of the Ethics Advisory Committee, myself and most of the Ethics Committee members agree to this postponement due to the fact that both sides are currently discussing potential modifications to the ethics ordinance. By way of reminder, when the Ethics Committee submitted our final draft at the last workshop meeting in April, it was understood that the Board of Trustees would then review it to determine what, if any, changes were needed. While some may argue the timeline for all this, the fact is that right now the wheel is moving forward. The committee felt we had a duty to meet with any board member that had asked to meet with us. For the committee not to be willing to meet with any board member on this could have been interpreted as our committee not being willing to work with the board towards the final version of this ordinance. I think all involved want the best version possible for our township. What I am discussed last week which was given to us at the last board meeting, excuse me, was for a more detailed procedure for civil infractions, which was not detailed in our final draft because we were waiting for input from legal counsel on that item. But since legal counsel is going to meet with us this Friday, we look forward to getting a final version done. Depending on the finalization of that, there has to be a little time allowed for the entire Board of Trustees to review it as well as the residents. I feel very strongly that the residents deserve time to review what will be the final product before any vote takes place. I'm hoping the meeting Friday will finalize the ordinance, allow time for the Board of Trustees and residents to review it, then be placed on a board agenda for a vote without further delay. A few more weeks won't hurt anything, given this has been a project 1.5 years in the making. We all look forward to getting this done for the betterment of our community. Thank you.
Anyone else? Agenda items only.
Good evening, Tom Sokol, and I wanted to speak on agenda items 24, 25, and 14. First, 24 and 25 regarding the ethics ordinance. I concur with Mr. Gelios's comments. Over the past 3 years that I've been involved and just being engaged with the township, there's a few things that I learned. One is that not everything that I want to see done gets done. Not everything that the residents want to get done gets done, and when things get done is usually not in the timeline that I would like to see them get done. So that being said, I'm pleased, and I do have a feeling of confidence that we're going to get this done, and I'm happy we brought up the timeline today. I concur with Mr. Bussino that it would have been nice if we were able to meet those the deadlines that were set out. But that being said, I'm also very happy that I feel that very confident that this is going to get done in a very timely manner. So I look forward to meeting with the board to work on this, and I just wanted to convey to this board and to the residents that I'm very confident that this is going to get done in a very timely manner, and I think it will be something that all parties involved will be very satisfied with. So I thank everybody who's involved with that for their hard work. The next thing I wanted to talk about was agenda item 14 regarding the library. One of the things that was brought up today was $800,000 improvement for the roads or road widening around the library. And I don't think this is necessarily a situation where, who should pay? Should it be the library? Should it be the township? I mean, that is a question, actually, but it's not about necessarily pointing fingers. However, I think it's a reasonable question around why $800,000, why 5 lanes, and why that wasn't brought up on the front end early on in terms of this project. So I think there's some questions around that. Why does it need to be 5 lanes? I think it's a reasonable question for the residents. Why can't we leave it as is, as not necessarily high traffic today, and maybe higher traffic at a later date? I know the library on Romeo Plank in Clinton Township, the main one, is it's a pretty busy street, and they don't have 5 lanes there. So there's some questions around that in the community. I'd like some discussion around the 5-lane ask from the township. So hopefully that comes up in the discussion today. Why 5 lanes? Why 800,000 for 1,000 feet? So I look forward to discussion on that today. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. I'd also like to speak to item number 14, the request from the library for us, the taxpayers, to pay for over $800,000 in road improvements, sidewalks, landscaping, street lighting, and other items so the library can build here in the town center area. While the public is watching you review this item, it would be useful to explain why this is being presented by the engineering department. This is about expenditures, not engineering. This was introduced and explained, or should be introduced and explained by the township supervisor with technical assistance from the staff as needed. This is not the first time this has been on the agenda. The first time it was on the agenda, in my memory, was in February, and it was an item brought forth by the supervisor. You might remember that I emailed all of you at the time, and I did question, why is this coming up as a surprise now? Why wasn't it discussed much earlier? And the supervisor pulled the item from the agenda and emailed me in response that this expenditure had not been overlooked, had not fallen through the cracks, but it had been in discussion for some months. As you discuss this item tonight, it might be also useful for you to educate the public as to why this project does not go through the Planning Commission. Instead, it goes through the Town Center Committee. And note, there are no residents on the Town Center Committee. It is composed of the Township Supervisor and some department heads. At the meeting of the Town Center Committee on March 11th of this year, they unanimously voted to insist that the library remove the line that said limit of work in their plans. And this had been a point of contention before, where the library on their plans put on those plans this work to be done by others. Now, at the meeting, they voted unanimously to remove that line. They also made it clear to the library, as told to me by the then planning director, that this was not going to go forward until these things were resolved. That was March 11th. Nonetheless, at their March 20th meeting, the library board was positively giddy as they authorized the project, the contracts, and the bonding. I was there. They couldn't wait to set the date for the groundbreaking, as they wanted to start a lot of conversation in the township, and they wanted to meet the printing deadline to put a picture on the cover of their spring-summer brochure. When, at that meeting, a Macomb Township resident pointed out that there seemed to be a disconnect between what she was hearing from the motions made by the township the prior week, the library seemed unconcerned that the township said they would not be issuing permits to put a shovel in the ground until some significant issues were settled. Now tonight, they're asking you for full permits without any of that being resolved. Thank you.
Anyone else? Very well, seeing no one, we will move on to the public hearing for the 2019-2020 budget. I will open the public hearing. It is 7:20. Ms. Smith, is there anything different from the last public hearing?
Yes, good. There is one change. On page II, the 2019 anticipated tax rates, millage rates for the general fund operating and park and rec operating did get updated, I think due to the Headley rollback. Other than that, there have been no changes to any of the line items within the budget since the last public hearing. But before opening it up to the public hearing, or to hearing comments and questions, I'd like to take a minute to address concerns that a resident expressed in an email that was sent to the Township Board when comparing last year's actuals to the upcoming budget requests. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go through and explain the variances of each department to the best of my ability. And if we have more in-depth questions on a particular department, I'm sure we can address those questions with the department head that submitted the request. For the supervisors department, the increase for next year compared to the actuals for this year was solely due to the deputy supervisor leaving last October, so the actual wages in 2019 are lower. That position is still being budgeted for in 2020, which is why that that department shows higher than actual for next year. The finance department, similar. That is due to the purchasing specialist position that was only accounted for, or the wages for 2.5 months in 2019, and I'm anticipating at least hopefully 11 months of next year of wages. So that's the increase for finance. Records management is due to document imaging projects for the current year and the upcoming year. The scanning of old paper files to create electronic copies is anticipated to be higher next year than it was this year.
Broadcast media, the actual equipment purchases in 2019 in the general fund were less than what is anticipated to be spent in 2020. The Treasurer's Department, next year's budget is higher than what this year's actuals were due to an additional accounting clerk position that has not been filled but is still being budgeted for next year. The legal section, the actuals for 2019 were $102,874. The 2020 budget, budgeted amount is $250,145. This is the amount that the department had requested and that the township supervisor asked that I bring to the public hearing tonight. The HR department, the position of the confidential assistant began last November and did not cover the entire year, therefore representing a lower actual amount for this year. Next year, that position should be for the entire year, is budgeted for the entire year, along with a possible additional part-time position. The building department, next year's budget was increased to include one additional building inspector and one additional vehicle compared to this year's actuals. The planning section or department, in 2019, the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals wages or board payments were lower than we expected. I believe this is due to a few meetings being canceled, as they only get paid if there are meetings that they attend. That department's office equipment and computer equipment for 2020 is budgeted higher than what they actually spent in 2019. And then the total expenses for the general fund, the majority of the reason that the total expenditures increase is due to purchase acquisition of property. This year was budgeted about $2 million, next year's $4 million. That also is due to the general fund's contribution to the Municipal Roadway Fund for road projects from Macomb County, including the widening of 23 Mile Road and the roundabout at 25 and Romeo Plank. And that's all I have on that. With any, at this time, I invite any comments, questions, or suggestions anyone may have.
Any questions?
No, Madam Chair, excuse me, Madam Chair, if I may, Stacy, thank you for the description of what each department was asking for. And I really appreciate that, you had all the analysis there that people will understand that. Thank you. Good job.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Madam
if I may. The actual, Stacy, for legal fees in 2018 was $127.78, and then in 19, $102,874, correct?
Correct.
So then, that's what that was the actual amount spent in those 2 years.
Correct.
So then, it's budgeted for going forward in this next fiscal year at $250,145. So that would almost be doubling it. So, I guess I would like to ask the department head what justifies, if you have two, I can understand in the first year not actually knowing, because it was a combined position, and it was the first year that we would have in-house legal counsel, which was hopefully to reduce our legal fees expenses. So we have 2 years that show actually what was spent. What do you see happening? The question was asked before, what do you see happening in the next fiscal year that would cause you to double it?
Well, I'm not foreseeing litigation. I'm creating a budget that takes into account, my experience would be that it would be almost reckless on my behalf to make sure that the township doesn't have some money set aside. It would be very common situation for a municipality of our size to have somewhere in the range of five different cases. The average of a case against a municipality up through the point of case evaluation would be roughly $50,000. They may go further than that or not. I'm doing my best to make sure that we don't get any of those cases, and I know the other department heads are as well, but that's why I asked for the additional amount.
If in fact, since it looks like in the past 2 years we haven't come across that problem, if Mr. Sorty was to run into such situation, he can always request an amendment to the budget, correct?
He could.
My concern with having it doubled in this particular category is all the department heads have to come before the board. Just because it's budgeted for doesn't mean that they can actually spend it. They still have to bring that request to the board and get permission and approval from the board to spend the money. and to ensure that it's budgeted for. This particular department does not have to do that, is not required to do that. My concern is doubling this budget to be open going forward means that Mr. Sorty doesn't need permission to spend any of it in factual, right?
I don't believe he needs to come back to the board, is my understanding.
Correct. So I personally have a problem with the doubling of that budget. I think it's extreme, and I don't find it necessary due to the fact that there can be an amendment and also that it requires no board approval on his expenditures. That's all I have to say.
Madam Chair, I just want to agree with our clerk, because when this position was created, I didn't vote for it. I don't think you voted for it. The budget was at, I think, around 250,000. Then we were told, no, it wasn't?
No, it was over 400,000 for the legal department.
Okay, so now we're at 250. We're at all your, the HR, let me put it this way. The HR general counsel budget, we're not saving any money anymore in the budget. And I don't know why next year you foresee this doubling. Is there something we don't know? Is there something that's going to be presented to us that we're not being told right now, or at least the public's not being told right now, of why we think we need to include another $150,000 in our budget? What's coming down the pipeline?
So, first off, I'm not doubling it. What I indicated is that I'm anticipating, based on my experience, not in the last 2 years, but the last 28 years, that it would not be uncommon for a municipality of our size to have 5 different lawsuits. Those 5 lawsuits, the average case in circuit court on those types of cases would be $50,000 to take us through case evaluation. I budgeted planning on 5 of those, and that's where the number came from. If you guys don't want to have that number, that's based on your experience that you don't think we're going to have those, that's fine. But my recommendation would be is that you have enough money set aside to make sure that if there are those lawsuits, we have the money in the budget to take care of them. If you feel, based on your experience, that that's unrealistic, then that's certainly your prerogative as board members.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Very good job. I will close the public hearing at 7:30. We will now move on to unfinished business, and that is a request to review, discuss, and update the anti-discrimination policy dated March 1st of 2004. This was postponed from the June 12th meeting.
Madam Chair, as of yesterday, I got to come and talk to Mr. Assorti. We went over the documentations and the changes I would like to make in the new policy. We've come to an agreement. Mr. Assorti offered to type it up for me and have it for me today, but I wasn't able to get here till yesterday till about 4 o'clock. He assured me he'd be able to type that up for me and have it for the next board meeting. Probably prior to that, you'll all get to see that if you want to make any changes to it at that point.
Okay. So are you asking then that it be postponed until the next meeting?
Yes.
Are you moving it to July, Madam Chair, if I may, are you moving it to July the 10th?
Mr. Assorti, does that give you enough time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, would you like to make that in form
Yes,
of
I'd
a
like to make that motion that it's adjourned to that date.
Postponed.
motion by Ms. Smith,
Support.
seconded by Mr. Buzzino, to postpone this issue until the July 10th meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Under new business, we have the Finance Department, and this is a request to set the millage rate for the 2019-2020 calendar year. Ms. Smith.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Yep, good evening again. Yep, this is a request to set the 2019 millage rates as follows. The Township General Operating Millage at .6461, Fire Operating at 2 mills, Fire Pension at .1009, the police protection millage at 1.55, and the park and rec operating millage at 0.7871. Those millages should be done by roll call vote and done separately.
Would you mind repeating the Parks and Rec millage?
0.7871?
Thank you. Very well, we'll do these one at a time. Township General Operating Millage, 0.6461.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion on the Township General Operating Millage at .6461.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Krasinski.
Support.
Seconded by Mr. Buzzino to set the Township General Operating Millage at .6461. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying
It has to be
nay.
done by roll call. Does it have to be done by roll call? Yeah. Roll call.
Isn't that just for the Appropriations Act? Everyone has to be, okay. Would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'll just go down the line and somebody will support it. How's that? Fire operating millage at 2.000.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Posey to set the fire operating millage at 2.00. Would
Madam
you
Chair,
call the roll?
oh, go ahead.
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'll allow my other trustees to do it because Mr. Bussino looked at me like why I was doing it. So if you'd like to do one, Mr. Bussino, go ahead.
Mr. Krasinski, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, fine. Madam Chair, I'll go ahead
I
and,
do what you're talking
I'll move
about.
on a fire pension millage at .1009.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to set the fire pension millage at 0.1009. Would you call the roll?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the next one is police protection millage at 1.5500.
Second.
Wait a minute. 1.55.
Yeah, 1.5500.
Okay.
Yeah, I did say that.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey to set the police protection millage at 1.55. All in, call the roll, please.
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the last one, Parks and Rec millage at .7871.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey to set Parks and Recreation millage at .7871. Would you call the roll?
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. All of these motions are declared adopted. Resolutions are declared adopted. Thank you. And the next one we have is the General Appropriations Act. Are there any questions, motions, or comments?
Madam Chair, if there's no discussion, I move to adopt the General Appropriation Act for the fiscal year of 2019 and 2020.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to adopt the 2019-2020 General Appropriation Act. Would you call the roll?
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Stacy.
Next, we have a request from the Supervisor's Office to adopt resolution and authorize the supervisor to sign Municipal Credit and Community Credit Agreement for fiscal year 2020. And I noticed Mr. Barbrett as well as Mr. White are both here this evening. We would be happy to hear how everything is going, but from the reports that I get, I think our ridership is up quite a bit.
Good evening. Ridership as well as your community continue to grow. I think they often go hand in hand. The seniors and disabled, I think, get a tremendous amount of use out of your program here in Macomb County, and it's really our pleasure to be able to serve them. I can tell you, it is the easiest thing I do every day to operate the Smart Community Transit Service because I receive almost no complaints about it. In fact, I can't recall sitting here the last one I received. So I can almost say I received no complaints with regards to the service. So that's always positive news to be able to bring to a board. One thing I'd like to mention to the board tonight, and I know somebody had addressed me about it in the hallway before the meeting started. So I know there's information out there on it. I think that we, since we took over your transit service, have done a pretty good job. I'll pat ourselves on the back of taking care of your seniors and disabled, and I think we've done that in all the communities that we serve. But I heard loud and clear in the last election that the taxpayers of Macomb Township and Richmond, for that matter, say to us, there's got to be something more for a mill. And I think part of that had to do with the fact that while we serve the 65 and over population very well, and the disabled population very well, we have little or nothing for the 25 to 55-year-old family, homeowner, single person living in your community, business professional, to provide them service, yet they all pay the same mill for that service. So we looked long and hard at something we could do for that part of the public that we seem to not be serving. And we decided we would start to provide, and it began June 1st, an airport shuttle service. And the airport shuttle service has been now somewhat widely reported on by some of the local newspapers and social media. But I'm here to tell you, I guess, in person that we're doing exactly what those reports say. We start at 5 a.m. every day, and we do one ride per day. It's based just like on our regular service. It's a first call, first serve kind of a service. So if you have a flight going out and you need transportation to the airport and you call that day, the transportation basically is yours. You reserve that day. If someone else calls and is available to go at that same time, we will certainly add them to the pickup route. But in fact, you will get the first time and availability. There's really no significant other rules to the service, if you will, other than we are asking people to try to be mindful of making an appointment time for a ride to the airport about 4 hours ahead of their flight. Now here in the south part of the county, we might adjust that to about 3.5 hours. But as most of you are aware, whoever travel I-94, it is probably one of the most unpredictable highways in southeast Michigan. And so we simply don't want to be having you arrive at the airport late and then kind of us being in any way having been responsible for that, even if it was a traffic accident or construction that was outside of our control. So we do ask people to book their transportation early if they're going to book with us. Just like with our other transit service, we'll pick you up at your home. We'll pick up however many people are in your party going to the airport at your home. It is one vehicle. It holds comfortably 10 people with luggage. They'll usually hold about 14, but we have to leave some luggage room for these kind of trips. Returning passengers are simply provided a pre-established phone number to call, and once they've left their flight, they basically call that number. Once they've left the aircraft, they call that number. The vehicle has a parking area actually at the airport where they can sit, and they will pull up to the door, pick you up, and bring you home. So it really gets you to the airport and back, absent parking your car, absent the cost, absent the headache and the worry of getting to the airport. And again, this was really just our effort to say, if we're going to charge, if the position is that there has to be a mill charged to support public transportation, then we should be providing something to our residents for that. And this was something we thought we could provide fairly, to all of our residents. So with that, that's really the new item. I do want to mention, and Smart has asked that I keep mentioning this, is that We are providing this through the municipal and community credits that you and your neighboring communities provide that use Richmond Lennox EMS for that service. So there is a list of those communities. I won't provide them one by one for the board, but understand there are communities in other parts of the county that may not choose to use their municipal and community credits in this fashion. So what that means is you get the service here in Macomb Township, you might not get it in a neighboring township to your south or to your west, kind of thing. Those communities can certainly do what we're doing, but it's a community choice or a provider's choice in your case that has put together, I think we put together 11 communities that are working now with our consortium. So with that, the phone number is the same as it is for our regular transit service. It's 844-666-5652. Again, that's 844-666-5652. And again, the service is available Monday through Saturday from 5 a.m. until 7 p.m. Unless the board has any questions, if that's appropriate, that's all I have to report on, other than the request that you approve the resolution for the supervisor to sign the transfer of the municipal and community credits to our organization to continue providing your transit service.
I just have a comment, and this is my personal comment, but I think that's a wonderful service that you are going to provide. I myself would not want to drive down to Metro Airport with this construction, and as you say, I-94 is always having an accident here or traffic is blocked up. So I think this is wonderful, and I wish you great success. You're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. So far, I know it's a bad pun, but the service has really been taking off.
Madam Chair, just wanted to add a comment. I love this service too. It's not free, right? Because the voters are paying out of their taxes. But I do like that you've got creative to use taxpayer dollars. I don't believe in any entity collecting taxpayer dollars and becoming a bank and just banking the money. So to this creative angle that, okay, we have some money left from what Macomb Township taxpayers pay. Again, it's not free. I just like that you're figuring out a way to use those tax dollars that, are being collected. And I think it is a great service. I agree with you. 94 is a mess at times. I travel that very often coaching baseball. So it's, I agree with you. Any time of day, 94 can come to a halt. So, but thanks.
Madam Supervisor, I would just like to ask a quick question.
Certainly, yes.
Since you rolled that service out, do you have an approximate number of how many times it's been utilized?
I didn't bring that with me tonight, but I can tell you we're averaging about, since June 1st, we're averaging about 4 days a week that we do have service operating right now. And again, that's based on, we're happy to do it 6, once we get that many calls. But we've been averaging probably 4 days a week right now.
Fantastic, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, you don't go to Flint by any chance, do you? Because I fly out of Flint.
I'm not going to say yes or no to that. What I have to do is, it's a great question.
I know.
It is. The reason I'm not answering it directly is because some of what I do, I run through our partners at Smart first to make certain that I am not saying something that I can't do with those dollars. And so before I would commit to that, it's certainly from the standpoint of ease, I live up a little nearer to Memphis, Michigan, here, and I fly out of Flint too because it's an easier airport to get in and out of. So
Right.
I would love to be able to do it, but I'm not certain if we can, and I don't want to commit to that until I've talked to the folks downtown.
Thank
Barbaretta
you,
is sitting
thank you,
there.
Mr. White. I appreciate that. I knew you weren't going to fly out of Flint. I really did. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Roger, for local transit agencies, they're required to stay in their service area, and that's Wayne, Oakland, Macomb here. So unfortunately, we can't take you to Flint. I apologize.
That's all
Unless
right.
we institute an interlocal agreement, and we can look into that. But as of today, I can say, unfortunately, Jeff can't depart from, you have to depart from Metro at this point. Just one of the things I wanted to add was, just in terms of being creative, you mentioned being creative. one of the things that a lot of people are not aware of is behind the scenes, Jeff and I have been working together on various grant applications. There's a number of different federal pots of money out there, and one of the things we're always looking for is pots of money that we can use as a match. Usually there's a match required, and so the dollars that you'll be approving tonight, the municipal and community, assuming you approve those municipal and community credit dollars, over the past couple of years, we've used those dollars as a match to secure other, specifically Section 5310 operating and other capital funds. So basically, every dollar that you approve here, we've been able to match it almost dollar for dollar. So the program is being funded, bringing federal dollars back specifically to Macomb Township and North Macomb to fund his program. So I just wanted people to be aware of that. So that's all I have, unless there are any other questions.
Thank you.
No, I don't have any.
Very well, thank you both for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any motions concerning this matter?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution and authorize the supervisor to sign the Municipal Credit and Community Credit Agreement for fiscal year 2020.
Motion by Ms. Goodhue,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Posey to adopt the resolution as presented. Would you call the roll?
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, yes. Trustee Bucino?
Yes.
Trustee Kuzminski?
Yes.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
And Supervisor Dunn.
Yes. This resolution is adopted. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we will have the add-on, which is the request to purchase computer software from CDWG. You have the letter in your packet that explains pretty much why we're asking for this. We've upgraded all of our computers as well as our software, and this is a request for updating the servers. And if you have any questions, I see Mr. Ivanowski is sitting there, ready for your questions. Anyone?
Just one, Madam Chair, for Bob. As far as the update of all this, does this give us to the point right now, updated as far as we can go?
Right, this will be the latest revision of the server operating system, which is Windows 2019. We have some servers right now, they're at 2008 and 2012. Those, within about 6 months, will be a security risk. They will not be supported anymore.
They won't be? Will we, will this,
We will not make any patches for 2008 and 12.
so we'll get rid of those and then we'll just rely on the 2019 that you're talking about?
Correct. That will be the latest and greatest that there is.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Yeah, one question. So every station's gonna be 2019, correct?
These are servers that are down in our basement, so every
Okay.
user is using them.
Okay, all right.
The fire stations that you're referring to, the operating system over there, did you say state?
No, the stations,
Oh,
not,
the
not, the
computers.
computer stations. I just wanna make sure.
Already upgraded at Windows 10, so
Okay.
they are where they could be.
Okay,
This is just for the server portion of it,
okay.
because there's several layers of,
So every computer station will be secure when we do this upgrade?
correct.
Because I knew that was a concern before, and I've talked to you about that too.
Right.
So,
The-
okay,
The computers that users use are already secured. This is for the servers themselves.
okay.
Anyone else? Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to purchase computer software from CDWG.
Motion by Ms. Posey,
Support.
Sorry.
Give to Bucino.
supported by Mr. Bucino to purchase the computer software as requested. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion is carried. Thank you. Next, we have an engineering department request to schedule a public hearing for street lighting. SAD resolution for Wolverine Country Club Estates, Phase 1. Mr. Van Tifflin, you're just asking for a date.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I believe the date is
August 14th.
August 14th. Is there a motion to that effect?
Madam Chair, this is administrative. I'll move on the date suggested by engineering of August 14th, 2019.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Nevers to set the date of August 14th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the next one is another public hearing, and this is for Country Club Estates Phase 2. And this is also August 14th.
Madam Chair, on the suggestion of the engineering or Grateful Engineering, August 14, 2019.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to set the date as August 14th for Wolverine Country Club Estates Phase 2. Next is the request to consider.
I'm sorry, take the vote. Take the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Number 14 is a request to consider the Clinton Macomb Public Library Board of Trustees request for Macomb Township to pay for the Broughton Road right-of-way improvements. Mr. Van Tifflin.
Yes, ma'am, Chairperson, members of the board. The request that comes before you tonight is from the library board. I'm going to try and address this item as well as some of the questions all at the same time, if I can. The library had come to the township in May of last year, so 2018, to discuss some of the design requirements. Obviously, they're building in a unique area in the township. This is Section 9. There's a different section of the zoning ordinance that governs how this area of the township is to be developed. There's architectural requirements. There are also requirements because it's supposed to be more of a city center than in other areas of the township. So at that meeting, we discussed the architectural concerns that we had with some of their preliminary sketches. We also discussed some of the requirements that the township was going to have with regard to the Broughton Road frontage. If you look at the rec center, it's a good example of what we've asked them to do. Parallel parking spaces, the street lights, the double-headed street lights that are out there, the brown ones, the landscaping with the trees, the wider sidewalk for the public to use in this core downtown area. Another thing that came up at the meeting, and it took some discussion between Mr. Maher and I that lasted until mid-June of last year, was with regard to any additional lanes that we would want to see on Broughton Road in that area. We've decided on a center turn lane as well as 2 through lanes. So essentially, right now, it's 2 lanes that would go to 3 lanes. We do not want that area of the township to have a 5-lane road. I suppose that you could maybe interpret the parking space as that additional pavement, so the pavement is that wide, but it won't be used for traffic. We want traffic in that area of the township to be going much slower, but we don't want it to be snarled up, and because when Broughton Road goes through, we want traffic to be able to turn left into the library if they're coming from the north, and into the town center, rec center area if they're coming up from the south once Broughton Road is put through. And we don't want to necessarily to wait until the road goes through, because we don't know when that's going to happen, because then we'd have to tear things apart and redo it at a later date. And that could be, a couple years from now, or it could be 10 years from now. We're trying with the Department of Roads to get the road pushed through. We just don't have a schedule yet from them. The remaining part of the summer, we concentrated a lot on the architectural side of the building, and I think got that resolved in September. We had some further discussions with them. They had brought to us some preliminary sketches of what the site would look like, what we discussed with them, including the Broughton Road improvements. At that time, they had indicated to us that they were going to be asking for other agencies to approve it, and they had some notes on their plans that indicated that they were looking that was going to be constructed by others. And we asked who others were, and they indicated to us that they were going to be discussing it with the Macomb County Department of Roads. So, that's fine with us. They weren't asking anything additional from us at that time. Later on in the year, they came back. We had some further discussions. They indicated to us that there was a district library law that would not allow them to pay for those improvements, anything outside the right-of-way. And I'm talking about the streetlights, the sidewalk, the landscaping, not only the pavement side of it. So at that point, they had sort of indicated that they wanted perhaps the township to kick in some money towards these improvements. I indicated to them, Patrick and I indicated to them, that they need to approach the township board. Obviously, department heads can't spend the township's money, and that decision would have to be made by the township board. We instructed them to get with the supervisor and have something prepared so that the township board could review it, an estimate as well as a request. So in February, I think somebody mentioned that there was something that was given to the township to consider that's similar to this. The estimate that they had given us at that time was a very rough estimate based on some improvements that were done in Clinton Township to the roundabout, with some other things with regard to sidewalks and street lights that were added to it, and that was $280,000 roughly. I was not comfortable having that come before the township board because I figured that the first question that the board was going to ask is, how much are we talking about? Is this a good number? And it wasn't based on an engineer did not put that estimate together. It was just a rough idea that the library personnel, I think, put together. So since then, we've been asking them for an estimate. Probably a month or so ago, we had another meeting with them. They indicated to us that they couldn't even pay for one of their engineers or architects to give us an estimate, to prepare that estimate. They couldn't spend that money. So I directed them to have the talk to the township supervisor about having us prepare it. I've asked AEW to prepare that estimate. That is what's before you tonight, and that's where the $800,000 came from, was from AEW. So the township paid for AEW to come up with these numbers. And again, just to be clear, this is everything in the right of way. So even if we, didn't have the center turn lane, for example, we would still want it to look like the rec center on that side of the road because it's a core downtown area. We would still be spending a considerable amount of money to put in the infrastructure that would make it look like the rec center does. So I think that addresses all of the concerns. The one thing I would like to add, if the board does decide to go ahead with this, my recommendation would be for us to do it internally and not do it through the library. Have one of our engineering consultants design it, permit it, bid it out, and that way we've got control over how the money is spent. All pay certificates come to the township board. Any change orders that are necessary come to the township board. So that would be my recommendation if you decide to participate in this. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Jim, thanks for speaking to me about this. In some ways, you're kind of in the middle of all of this again. But this is what's more concerning. I have concerns with an $800,000 cost I didn't see coming. Okay, I have to take that into consideration. But this is even more concerning, and maybe you can't answer this. I wish someone from the library board was here, but let me read their letter that was in our packet. We understand the addition of right-of-way expenses was not anticipated. Likewise, we do not anticipate the difficulty of dealing with wetlands on the site, nor the challenges of keeping the project financially feasible, given the continued hot construction market and cost of materials due to tariffs. We have remaining concerns about soil conditions, which will not be known until earthwork begins, and potential schedule delays, which could move us into winter construction with higher cost. Right now, you said they don't have money to even get an engineering firm to give a recommendation. Those higher costs on the soil conditions, do you think those costs would be passed on to our township?
What they've indicated to us is that the concern is with regard to items that are not on the actual property that the library that they own. So anything having to do with soils, I would assume that would be covered under their contract, under their bond, that they would be able to pay for all of that. It's the stuff that they consider off-site that they say they can't pay for because of this district library law. So I've not run into this type of thing before. Typically, these are things that developers pay for. So if this was any place else in the township or in the town center south of here, where we do have some core downtown areas, where developers will own it, and they'll be developing not civic buildings, but they'll be developing more commercial type buildings. There will be parallel parking spaces and lights and landscaping and all that to make it look like it's part of this core downtown area. And are we setting a precedent for them. So, obviously, we've got a bit of an issue here because we got another public entity, that it says that they have an issue as far as I'm not an attorney, but that's what they indicate to us, is that they can't pay for anything off-site. The reference to the Clinton Township work, what they've told me is it has to do with the roundabout, that is at Canal and Romeo Plank. I don't know who paid for their sidewalks or the landscaping that's along that road frontage. The roundabout, I would have a hard time justifying that, just like I would have a hard time justifying charging a developer for the roundabout at 25 in Romeo Plank. I think that's something that is more township, more county based, and those two entities should probably bear the cost of that, whatever that cost share is.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if I may, Jim, just an example of what that roadway is going to be. You and I are driving, we're just leaving the Broughton Road, we get up to 25 Mile. We make a left-hand turn. We're going east, and we come up to that sub. Is that the way that the road is going to open up, like what you're talking about in this contract, into those 3 lanes?
Yeah, it will look like, sort of like the intersection at 25 in Broughton. As you go up to the intersection, there's that left turn lane, then there's a lane that goes to the intersection that you could go north on Broughton, or you could turn right towards Foss Road. Just picture that center turn lane a little bit longer, and it's the same principle. More
Okay.
than likely, if the property to the east of us develops, that center turn lane would be extended south to accommodate both the ice arena as well as, whatever ends up going on that property to the east.
Okay, so that, because, from the drawing is one thing, but to have an example of, in
Yes.
your mind, of what it is, of something like that, it gives me a better perspective.
It's a 12-foot lane that sits in the middle of what we already have out there.
Okay. The other thing, too, is that costs are going to be going up within a year or 2 or 3 years from now. So this 800 could be $1 million, $1.2 million, somewhere's down the line. Could that be correct?
Yes, construction costs seems to be going up, yes. Materials as well as labor. Labor is a big issue right now.
That's the biggest issue that's happening out there. And also the other thing that's going to happen, and I think you mentioned in your dialogue that you were presenting, is that the increase of traffic because of what's going to be coming into the library and of the exit that's going to be coming out from the Parks and Rec, and the people going to the library, and also the ones that are coming in from using it as far as the ice arena. So we're just, we're preventing something. We're looking at preventing and making sure everything is in the ground that we have, that we're controlling, and we can move on with this.
My philosophy is do it once and be done with it.
Correct.
So you don't have to tear everything back out when Broughton Road gets extended.
Correct.
And that's essentially what we're trying to do, is go 3 lanes with that center turn lane from basically the bridge where the drain crosses to just south of Plattsburgh, and then it would narrow back up until they decided to the south of us what they were going to do with their portion of the core downtown area.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I may. Jim, in the letter that came from the library, they indicate that the library's professional team tried to quantify the scope and cost of the right-of-way improvements, even though these are outside the scope of the project, as noted by the library's engineer last summer. Do you recall that notation?
In their letter, yes.
Yes. Okay, so wouldn't it be fair to say, in the minutes that I reviewed and in a meeting that I attended, it was also noted by Macomb Township that these right-of-way expenses should not be solely responsible on the township's end. So it's fair for us to say that we noted the same thing, just on our end.
Yeah, at one point we'd had some discussions about the property transfer and perhaps the library paying a portion of the cost of the road as payment for the land, and then the township could then turn around and use those funds to pay for the road improvements.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So they indicate in here that with the library millage, they are unable to use the money towards this project. However, my concern is then why in the beginning of the project, when this was all being discussed and it was preliminary, did we then not consider exactly that? Why didn't we consider them using those dollars to purchase the land from the township, and then in turn, we could use that money to go towards these, what they call unanticipated expenditures, but from what I understand, these have been anticipated from the very beginning.
We brought this up to them as soon as, we had the opportunity to sit down and discuss how the site was gonna be laid out and designed, and they actually asked us, at that meeting, what do you guys wanna see along Broughton Road? What is the look that you're looking for in this, downtown area? And we pointed across the street and said, that's essentially what we're looking for. Parallel parking, the lights, what you'd see in any small town, in Michigan, essentially.
So that being said, then what happened in the conversation that didn't lead to them purchasing the land with their millage money versus getting it for free and then in addition giving us the expenses of that part of the project?
I wasn't a part of that. I'm not sure what happened with that.
Okay. And there's nobody from the library here that can answer those questions, or anybody from the TCC board that can answer those questions?
I don't have the TCC booklet in front of me, but there's one thing I really want to point out, and that is when we were planning on having a court on that property, there was extensive estimates, whatever, and the road improvements were not included in those estimates either. So as it stands now, whatever we decide would be appropriate for that property, let's say we want to build a community center, we would then have to put the improvements in, correct, Jim?
If the township was the developer, yes.
So no matter what goes in there, those improvements have to go in.
Right, but like you mentioned, that would be if the township was the developer. We're not the developer in this project, correct?
The way I look at it, and that's why I have to look at it as the engineer for the township, and Pat has to look at it as a planner. The library owns the property, it's their building, they're the developer in this case.
So
Yes.
we've had developers that have looked into that area, and if they were to develop north of that, they would be required to do the improvements. Yes? No?
Something similar. Outside, north of the drain, it's a little bit different. It's not a core downtown area, so you're kind of transitioning to a much lower density by the time you get to 25, so you don't want to have, all of that. But we have talked to them about some of those types of improvements, yes.
So I have another question. I don't know if you can answer this or someone else. It specifically says in here that unfortunately, the Macomb County Executive and Director of the Macomb County Department of Roads have declined to participate in any improvements to Broughton Road and the right-of-way. The county owns Broughton Road?
Yes, it's a county road.
Okay. And who spoke directly to the Macomb County Executive and/or the Director of the Macomb County Department of Roads on behalf of Macomb Township?
I don't think anybody from Macomb, I did not. I don't know if anybody else did.
Yeah.
I think they're talking about the library board did.
So the library board represented Macomb Township in trying to get them to do a cost share with us on their project. If I understand that correctly.
I think they were looking for somebody to pay for the improvements, yes.
Okay.
And
But they represented Macomb Township, in a sense, if we had no voice there.
Yeah, perhaps.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I have a suggestion.
I'm still going.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
The, another item in here, it indicates the center turn lane would likely primarily benefit northbound traffic access to the Parks and Recreation Building and Township Hall. Whose opinion is that?
That's their opinion.
So is there any factual basis to that?
I think it would be used for both the library and the township facility. I mean, these two roads are supposed to be extended much farther west.
Correct.
Onto development properties. Both roads go, basically over to almost where Cracklewood is.
Right.
So
I just found that statement to be a bit misleading, only because if you watch, as it was mentioned by Mr. Krasinski, I think the traffic that was, I don't know, a resident spoke on behalf of the traffic over at the Clinton Macomb Library off of Romeo Plank. I mean, there's a lot of traffic coming in and out of that library, so I would think that on the township's opinion would be that it'll be utilized equally by both buildings, not more or less the other.
They have one building on that side of the road. You know, we've got a couple plus everything to the west. So yeah, you could have some people that are coming up from Hall Road on Heidenreich and Broughton, that's just the way they you know, get to the town center, and then they take a left and they head, you know, home.
Right.
So yeah, eventually when everything is pulled in, yeah, there'll probably be a lot of traffic that's turning, you know, left, going west on Plattsburgh or Macomb Street. It's just gonna take a while to get to that point.
Okay. It also indicates, and I'm guessing it's their opinion, the majority of the new parallel parking spaces on Broughton Road will likely be used by residents to access the Parks and Recreation Building rather than the library. We currently have plenty of parking for the Parks and Recreation Center, so if that's not necessary, that's just an opinion. It's not a factual statement as well.
It's somebody's opinion, yes.
Okay. As I agree with the resident that came up and spoke with that timeline, I followed it through the minutes. And to say that this was not anticipated, I believe is a false statement, because at the last, I don't know if it was the last board meeting, but the last board meeting this was discussed, Mr. Maher did a PowerPoint presentation that had bullet points of 3 things that had to be addressed before the preliminary site plan would be approved. And it said the library district has proposed a greater separation between the 2 drives. TCC recommended approval of the preliminary plans subject to the applicant working with the fire department regarding turning radius for the fire trucks and removing the limit of work line, which indicates where the library will disturb ground and entertain their project. The motion started by Mr. Krasinski to proceed as recommended by the planner, but then was read by the supervisor to only include the part where the radius for the fire trucks was to be reviewed or amended. But the last 2 things were left off. And I think by leaving off those 2, that important last bullet would put us in a way of being responsible for this instead of working it out with them differently. It put the responsibility onus on us, am I right?
Yes, and it's put me in an awkward, well, Joe and I in an awkward spot, because we've told them, or I have told them, I don't want to throw Joe under the bus here, but I've told them that I'm not comfortable letting any real construction activity happen on that property until this issue is resolved.
Right.
I think it's that important, and obviously it's $800,000 worth of taxpayer money here. So I think this needs to get resolved one way or the other before we allow them to really start spending a lot of money. Yeah, they've cut down some trees. You know, they've paid their design team to come up with plans and specifications and those types of things, but the real money is going to be spent once they break ground and start going vertical on the building and start putting the infrastructure on the site.
Anyone else?
I just have another question. So, I know Mr. Maher's not here, and he played an extensive role in all of this and was at most of the meetings, but as an engineer, would you recommend approving this?
Oh, my God.
I don't know that it's appropriate for me to answer that
I just
question.
wanted to know
What I can tell you is what we would require of any other developer in all of these things we would require of another developer. Now, this sits in the town center, so obviously we've got a lot more expenses along that frontage. You know, you could make an argument that it could be something that's a shared cost, because there is some benefit to the township for having, you know, the library there, the road improvements, the look of the town center instead of that just being a vacant field. So, you know, but to throw it all in the township, it's hard to, if I was sitting where you are, it'd be hard to swallow. Yes.
So I guess one of my biggest concerns is that somebody from the Macomb Township didn't directly speak with the county executive and or the director of Macomb County Department of Roads on behalf of the township to see if we couldn't toss around some options, whether it be cost sharing, whether it's the township fronts the money in order to get the project done, and we've done it where they pay us back in the next budget cycle if this wasn't in their budget. I have made a call to see, I wanted to know the exact reasons why the county executive and or the director of Macomb County Department of Roads declined to participate with us. So I made a phone call to find out that they could provide me with that explanation so I could share it this evening. They asked if they could have a little time to review the information and get back to me. It may not change, it may be the same answer that they declined, but I thought it was important as a board member to understand why, since it is a county road, that we couldn't try and negotiate some type of cost sharing, so that this entire expense doesn't fall on township. I'm totally for the library, I'm totally for the project. I just feel that these costs were anticipated, and there may have been some options that we overlooked, not with the board, the TCC, whoever was involved, that could have potentially reduced our expense to accomplish this project. So that being said, I would make a motion to postpone this until I can hear back from the Department of Roads to see if they are willing in any shape, form, or way to participate or assist us with the expense.
Madam Chair, I'll support that motion.
Madam
That's a
Chair,
motion I was gonna make.
I'd like to have some dialogue. I'm not done on this yet, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to ask some questions of the engineer, if I may.
Go ahead.
Jim, when we started this project on the TCC, isn't it that we negotiated with the library that the land is ours? And we're allowing them to develop there? Is that not true?
My understanding of what happened is the township has transferred the ownership of the land to the library. And as long as the library sits on that property, it is their land. Once the library closes and ceases to be a library, then the property would revert back to the township.
If I may ask, Tom, is that true on that statement?
Yeah, we negotiated a.
Move your, yeah.
We negotiated a provision on the transfer of the property. In fact, it was a bone of contention at several meetings. We said under no circumstances would we allow the transfer of the property without a reverter clause in the agreement, such that it would return to the possession of the township if it ceases to be a library, not just, if it closes, if it ceases to be a library, it comes back.
Comes back to us?
Correct.
Okay. Another question also is that even if we would have, even if the court system would have got in there 5 years ago, we would have automatically paid for it the same way that we're doing it right now, correct, Jim, you think?
I'm not sure how that would have worked with the court. I don't know what their requirements are, if there's a similar statute that prevents them from paying for the right-of-way improvements. I can tell you that if it would have come to me, I would have required the same types of improvements along Broughton Road, regardless of what is going on in that site.
Correct. And no matter what, the improvements have to be made in order for the project to go forward.
That is my recommendation, yes.
Yes. Thank you. And I'm sorry you were put on the spot on that, Jim. That's not your job to be on that particular issue.
I would like to mention one other thing. We did have a meeting with State Senator McDonald a week or two ago, and we have given them some information that they were going to talk to the committees in Lansing to see if there's any funding that we can get from the state for those improvements. So we haven't heard anything back.
Okay, one other question, Jim. The timeline for the library, do you know what their timeline is? Because I know this is associated with the permit also on this thing.
Yeah, they would like to have broken ground in May, but I don't think they're there with their permitting and approvals and whatnot for, the actual building site, all the plans. I think I can't remember their original schedule, but I think they were trying to open by fall of next year, if I remember right.
Correct. So that's where it's at on that particular issue. So a delay of this of any magnitude, I think, would cause a problem as far as the building to be built.
Well, we don't want to get caught in winter construction.
Correct, and I'm well aware of that, and that's the biggest issue. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, costs go up if they have to use winter construction techniques for the building.
Correct. All right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may ask a question, did you just say, though, their plans aren't even finalized yet?
I think so.
So to delay this to the next meeting isn't going to
I don't think so.
change? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, there's a motion on the table, but I would like to add something to it, because, Jim, thank you so much for answering questions for the township and the library board at the same time. Could we, Madam Supervisor, you make a request of somebody from the library board to sit up and answer some of these questions before we take a vote? because they're asking us for an $800,000 addition and maybe more. You know, I think maybe they should answer some questions about their dealings with their engineers and you know, answer some of the questions that maybe Jim had to answer. Could they sit in front of us? You know, maybe they won't come. I don't know, but could we make a request that before we vote on this, that they come and answer some of these questions too?
Madam Chair, if I may, just one other item before we call this, is that the governance of the library itself is dictated by law. And one of them is that they cannot do certain stuff with the money they receive. And so no matter if they do come up in the chair, and that's not a problem for me, they're going to say exactly is that they have rules that they have to follow, and it only covers that particular district of the library, and from there on. They can't add, you know, anything else to it, because I've talked at length with some of these guys, and it's they're bound by a certain law that's out there. It really is. It's a library law that's out there. So I'm just adding that.
I get
as-
that, I
and that's-
understand that, but
thank
when
you.
they're asking for a $800,000 addition, I'd like to see one of them at the board meeting come up and ask us, not Jim.
Also, Madam Chair, nobody could answer the question why then the governance that you're referring to, why it wasn't utilized to purchase the land so that it would allow the township to have, instead of just the township donating the land, why didn't we utilize the $341,000?
I'll answer that question.
Okay.
The discussions were had, they absolutely rejected it.
Who rejected it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We had discussions with that. Under no circumstances, after meeting with their attorney and their board, were they gonna accept that. If they would've had to pay $700,000 for the property, it would've never happened.
But, so, I appreciate that, but wasn't it appraised at 341,145? So would it be 700, that's what I'm just asking because I wasn't there. They thought it was a $700,000 purchase because the number I got from Stacy was 341,145.
Oh, I thought you said a purchase to cover the cost of I thought you said the purchase to cover the cost.
Oh.
I'm confused what you're,
I am too.
So my question was, when I asked Stacy how much the value of the land was, it was 341,145. So my question, so they were saying, from what I understand from the governance, is that they can't utilize the library millage to do these improvements, these road improvements.
It's not the millage, it's the bond money.
Okay, so the bond money cannot be used for these improvements,
Right.
but the bond money could be used to purchase the land,
I
correct?
don't-
That's what I'm asking.
we don't know.
Okay.
I don't know that.
But you said that question was asked in the preliminary meetings, correct?
We discussed it, yes.
And at that time, did anyone indicate if that was something that could be done with the bond money? You don't know? That's
Yeah, I
it.
don't
Okay,
know.
so
I'm sorry.
that's, you know, I would like to know. I mean, you know, if there could have been different negotiating. And like I said, yes, the improvements have to be done so we can move forward with the project. But obviously, there's somebody that is trying to see if possibly the county will in fact cooperate. Maybe the library didn't have success in negotiating that. Maybe something different will come of it. But I think it's worthwhile to see if we can get any type of agreement or cost sharing if it's available.
I believe it was Ms. Silda, who is the vice president of the library board, that approached the county executive's office on the library's behalf to see if they would participate in the cost sharing. They said, I don't know why, I'm assuming it's because it wasn't in their budget, and Jim can attest to how strictly they go by their budget. If there's not money in it, they just say absolutely no. So I'm assuming that's what happened. I don't know for sure, but Ms. Silda came back and said that the county executive and the Department of Roads said they would not participate.
Yeah, I read that. So I'm indicating that I had a conversation and they're reviewing it to see if there's something, like I said, they may come back with the same answer, but I think it's worthwhile to see if something changes.
Madam Chair, if I ask, did they say that if we move this to July 10th, if we're going to table this to the July 10th meeting, do I have to make do you have to make a sheet out for that? I'm just asking. But anyway.
No, it's postponed.
Okay, good. If we move it to July 10th, Jim, and I don't know what the library's timeline is on making this thing, do you think by that time that the county would get back with us?
Yeah,
Do you
I'm supposed
know?
to hear back tomorrow, actually, in fact. So I would,
At where?
I'm supposed to hear back from them tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow,
Yeah.
okay.
So I'm hoping to have an update tomorrow. So
Okay.
definitely by July 10th, if that's your question, yes.
Yeah, it is. That's why I was asking. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's a
motion to
motion
postpone.
and support on the floor to postpone.
To the July 10th meeting.
Correct.
Who made the motion?
I
Sorry.
made the motion and trustee
I
Bucino
supported.
supported it.
Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Buzzino to postpone this item until the July 10th meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Ms. Posey, you'll automatically put this on the July 10th?
Yes.
Cool.
Next, we have a Water and Sewer Department request for approval to pay Modernistic Water Restoration LLC. And this is for the Pinnacle Woods subdivision sewer backup. Mr. Wangland.
Thank you, Board. As Supervisor Dunn has already stated, Water and Sewer tonight is requesting that we pay Modernistic Water Restoration LLC for the cleanup of 9 basements in the Pinnacle Woods subdivision. This work was needed due to a sewer backup on May 12th. The sewer backup occurred because of work that was being done in the subdivision directly across the road on the north side of 23 Mile Road. It should also be noted that this dollar amount will be reimbursed back to the township, back to the Water and Sewer Department by the contractor that was responsible for this backup. Requesting we approve this invoice in the amount of $20,798.66. I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Mr. Wangland?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to pay Modernistic Water Restoration LLC for Pinnacle Woods subdivision sewer backup.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Posey, seconded by Mr. Krasinski to approve the reimbursement payment as advised. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the next one is to approve the contract modification number 1. No? What am I missing here?
16.
Request to approve the contract modification number 1, 2019 sanitary sewer cleaning and CCTV investigation.
No, that's 16.
Right here.
The one above it, I'm sorry. Okay, request to approve the reimbursement requests for sanitary sewer backups, Arrowhead Drive, Pinnacle Woods, and Torrey Pines.
Thank you.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you again, board members. Tonight, Water and Sewer is in front of you requesting that we approve reimbursement to 3 out of the 9 homeowners. 3 out of the 9 have already submitted some claims here, and we feel it is in the best interest to get these folks paid in a timely, quick fashion. Again, this backup occurred because of work going on across the road. I've had good conversations with that contractor. They are willing to reimburse the township, and if approved, part of your motion, I would request stipulate that the homeowners, these addresses, sign a release of claim form. So I'm recommending approval of these 3 reimbursements and the dollar specified in the memo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Jerry, you want each individually done with the dollar amount or in total, in totality?
I think each individually.
Each individual, with them signing a release by us?
Release of claim signed by them, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
Thank you, Madam
one
Chair.
other thing I might add is I anticipate a few more of these for the July 10 meeting.
Oh, Thank you. Madam Chair, upon the recommendation of our premier water and sewer superintendent, and the first address of 24773 Arrowhead Drive in the amount of $9,946.98. Motion to pay that and to also have the people sign a release statement to us.
Correct.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. The next one,
The next one, Madam Chair, will be 50360 Pinnacle Woods Lane in the amount of $5,962.74, and also with the same stipulation that the homeowners sign a statement releasing us.
motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Nevers for the reimbursement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the last one,
The last one, Madam Chair, is 50458 Torrey Pines in the amount of $26,837.69, and also with the caveat of the homeowner signing the release to us.
motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve the reimbursement payment. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the next one is the contract modification number 1 for sanitary sewer cleaning and CCTV investigation. Mr. Wangland.
Thank you, Board, again. As everybody's aware, we're in round 3 of cleaning and TVing sanitary sewers in various sections of the township. When we submitted this work, we had several companies submit quotes, and we had a specific dollar amount set aside in our CIP program. When these bids came in, this bidder submitted a very good quote and allowed us, we felt, to get more work done, because the quote was very good, was a little on the low side, we thought. So with that said, we're making a request to increase this contract by the amount of $81,892.50. I might add, they've been working in the township for about a month now and are doing good work, and we'd like to continue them doing some additional work. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, on the recommendation of our premier water and sewer superintendent, go with the contract to sanitary sewer cleaning and also CCTV investigation
Motion
in the amount of
by Mr.
$81,892.50.
Correct.
Second.
Supported by Ms. Posey to approve this payment as advised. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you.
One point of clarification, it's not a payment, it's an increase in the contract amount.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Next, we have a building department request, and that is authorization to update the building department fee schedule. Mr. Maples.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm here before you tonight to request authorization to update the building department fee schedule. The building department is an enterprise department that is required by law to cover all of its expenses. In order to make sure we meet our budgetary requirements, I've conducted an extensive review of our current fees and have attached the proposed updated fee schedule for your approval. The building department last updated the fees in March of 2017, but recently there have been some code changes that require the fee schedule to be amended. Also, with the new BSNA online software that was recently approved by the board, it is necessary to make some changes to clarify and streamline the fee schedule so that the software implementation will be an easy transition for both contractors and staff. The supporting documents are in your packets, and the changes requested are made in red for ease of reading. Some of this is housekeeping issues that have been added to it. It's not all increases for fees. One thing I would ask is that if you do approve this, that you would include in your motion an effective date of July 1st. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, hearing none, you don't want me to read all of these, all the ones that are in red, do you want me, Joe?
No, those are
Just-
just, right.
Just letting us know. Okay. Madam Chair, upon the recommendation of the building director, as submitted, the new rates to take hold on July the 1st.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue, to approve the updated building department fee schedule as of July 1, 2019. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have the fire department. This is a request to approve the promotion of a probationary firefighter. Phillips.
Madam Supervisor, members of the board, I'm recommending the promotion of probationary firefighter Steve Brown to the position of auxiliary firefighter. Probationary firefighter Brown has successfully completed his 12-month probation period with the Macomb Township Fire Department and is therefore recommended for promotion. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Phillips?
Make a motion that we approve the promotion of probationary firefighter Brown.
Support. Motion by Ms. Goodhue, seconded by Ms. Smith to approve this promotion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries.
And at this time, I'd invite firefighter Brown, along with his father up, Mr. Steve Brown, who is retired from the Detroit Police Department with 34 years of service, who has requested the honor of pinning the badge on his son.
Nice.
That's cool. You know, Dad, you could do it the way the SEALs did it.
Like a boot here.
Be safe out there.
Congratulations to both of you, all three of you. Wonderful. Next, we have a planning department request to approve an extension of time for the preliminary plan Mistwood Estates site condominiums. Mr. Van Tifflin, this is a standard request
It
for
is.
1 year?
1 year, the planning commission is recommending it.
Okay. Any questions about that?
Hearing none, I'm making a motion to approve the extension of time preliminary plan Mistwood Estates site condominiums located on the south side of 23 Mile Road, a quarter mile east of North Avenue, Section 24, permanent parcel 0824201011.
Motion by Ms. Posey. Support. Supported by Ms. Goodhue to approve this extension of
Ms.
time.
Smith.
Ms. Smith, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. And the next one is a request to approve a rezoning request from AG to R1 Family Urban. Mr. Van Tifflin.
Yes, ma'am, Chairperson, members of the board. On June 18th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to hear concerns get input with regard to rezoning a piece of property that's about halfway between 25 and 26 Mile on the west side of Luckman Road. The area is surrounded or is in the process of being developed as single-family residential R1. And the Planning Commission is recommending that the Township Board approve the rezoning from AG to R1 because it's in accordance with the master plan and the surrounding uses. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the extension of time, landscaping and site improvements, Brook Ridge Estate site condominiums.
No, this is the rezoning.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Motion to approve the rezoning request. Agricultural AG to residential one-family urban R1, located on the west side of Luckman Road, half-mile north of 25 Mile Road, parcel 0805400005.
Motion by Ms. Posey,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to approve this rezoning request. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. Motion carries. Number 22 is a request to approve an extension of time for Brook Ridge Estates site condominiums. Is this for 1 year also?
This is actually a extension from June 1st to June 30th, but when the Planning Commission heard it, they decided to give them, and the weather that we've had obviously has not been conducive for landscaping and other improvements. They decided to extend that out to July 31st. So the Planning Commission is recommending July 31st as the completion date.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve this extension of time to July 31st for this parcel, 0833-376-012.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Nevers to approve this extension of time. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next one is a rezoning from agricultural to C2. Mr. Gentile.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. On June 4th, the Township Planning Commission held a public hearing to consider this rezoning from AG to C2. This particular piece of property is associated with the liquor store that's in the southwest corner of Card Road and 23 Mile, as well as the old landscaping company parcel that was behind it, that goes south on Card Road and also west on 23 Mile. This particular piece of property is the house that sits right next to the county drain, the McBride Drain, which is about a quarter mile roughly west of Card Road. The intention of the developer is to combine all those pieces together and develop it as one big commercial center. Because of the natural screen that the drain provides, and it's for the entire corner, the Planning Commission is recommending that the Township Board approve the rezoning from AG to C2. Be happy to answer any questions. Same conditions, that it meets the goals of the master plan and matches up with the surrounding uses.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, do you have anything to add to that?
Nothing to add.
Very well. Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion to request this rezoning from AG to C2, located on the south side of 23 Mile, permanent parcel number 0822200005.
Thank you.
A second.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Posey to approve the rezoning as recommended by the Planning Commission. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a trustee request to approve the proposed ethics
Madam
ordinance.
Chair,
That's-
those were
Got postponed.
It's tabled.
24 and 25.
I thought we put them back on the agenda with the agenda approval. I
Why so?
asked that question at least twice.
No, those were postponed.
Those were postponed.
Both postponed.
Okay,
Love to vote on it tonight.
24, 25. Then we have legal counsel. This is an add-on. Request to approve the agreement to permit recording of condominium master deed. Mr. Sorty.
Madam Chair and members of the board, Stillwater Macomb Development, ROI, Macomb Land Holding, and Elro Corporation are in the process of developing certain land as a site condominium project, which will be known as Stillwater Crossing. A master deed has been presented by that group for approval by the Township Board and has been reviewed by all the appropriate departments and has been approved. Typically, the Township does not allow the recording of that master deed until all of the all the permit requirements are completed for each of the units within the condominium project. Remember, this is a site condominium project, so it's neighborhood situation. But with that, in addition to that, during that process, because it doesn't get recorded, no tax ID numbers can be issued for each of the individual units. We've had some discussions relative to this internally with several of the departments. I spent quite a bit of time with our township engineer, Mr. Van Tiffelen, and I know Mr. Van Tiffelen has spent quite a bit of time talking with some of the other department heads, and I have as well, that are involved in this issue. And we feel that on this particular parcel for this time, that we can take a look at allowing the recording of the master deed, which would allow the issuance of the tax ID numbers, provided we enter into this agreement, and then that's presented to you tonight. That agreement covers two very important things. One, it makes them promise that if something, for some reason, one department doesn't communicate, or there's some sort of something winds up in somebody's hands that shouldn't, that it won't get recorded and there won't be a transfer of the property until that's done. And if in fact that fails, and for some reason it does, that all of these groups will indemnify and hold harmless the township from any costs or damages associated with that. We all felt, while that's, and I won't ask to speak for all the department heads, I feel very comfortable with it. I know some others are okay with it. But nobody specifically objected to it being an extreme problem. And so with that, I'd ask for the approval to authorize the supervisor to execute this agreement.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, on the recommendation of the lawyer is to authorize the supervisor to execute the attached agreement allowing the recording of condominiums master deed for Stillwater Crossing.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
seconded by Ms. Goodhue to approve the agreement. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have public comments, and this is on non-agenda items.
Number 27 was moved to public, to open session. Closed session.
Number,
27.
I don't have 27.
27 is a closed session item.
Yeah.
No, we made a
moved to
motion to move it into open session.
We're
And
going to open session
It was moved to open.
Yeah,
before public comments.
yes.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
We're not going into closed.
No, we can make a motion to go into closed session. We always said we don't have to go in open session right now. I can make a motion to go into closed session. Either be one way or the other. If somebody supports me, then we'll go from there.
And I can ask a question of why we're going into closed session, which is the big question right now on this item. Going into closed session is a very narrow window in the state of Michigan that you can do this. And we're being asked to go into closed session under MCL 15.268, Section H. That is a condition that says to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. I would like to know which state or federal statute exempts us from discussing this in open session. I gotta remind this board, since I've been on it, we've been found guilty in a court of law about going into closed session improperly. And this section right here, this condition, was stated in that judgment against us that you just can't use that as an umbrella. And we tried it once, it didn't work, and so I want to know what state or federal statute exempts us from discussing employee reimbursement.
Madam Chair, Mr. Busino, I believe the lawsuit that you're referring to, that case was under 15268A, not H. That was different.
It
15.
did mention H in the judgment. 100% it did.
Okay. I've provided tonight for the board for their consideration and discussion in closed session, a written legal opinion regarding the rights and liabilities of the township relative to a particular issue. I, in 28 years, have never had that questioned to go into closed session. If it's your prerogative to have it in open session, we'll have to have some discussion, but I, as the township attorney, will not discuss a written legal opinion in open session. I have, for all my years of practice, never disclosed a client confidential matter and waived on behalf of my client the attorney-client privilege, and I have no intention of doing it now. I'll be happy to work with the board and get them whatever any information they want. I hope that answers your question.
And I, in 48 years of my life, was never found guilty of a state statute until I went in a closed session when I wasn't supposed to, as a member of this board.
To be clear, there was no finding of guilt in that matter. That was a civil matter, in which case there's no guilt as prescribed. But I'll be happy to do whatever the...
Are there penalties for going into closed session knowingly when you're not supposed to? Are there jail and are there fines? And we've been found guilty of it once. Are there fines and are there potential jail sentences if we go into closed session when we're not supposed to?
There are certain provisions of the law that find it, if you intentionally violate the act, that it is, in fact, that's the case. But on this particular issue, I have a written legal opinion that I'd like to discuss with the board. I do not feel comfortable discussing a written legal opinion and potentially waiving the attorney-client privilege in an open forum. I'll do whatever the board would like to get the board information. It was not my intent to withhold anything. It's to protect the board so that it can use the attorney-client privilege to discuss its rights and liabilities and not waive that privilege in a public forum.
So what material is exempt from discussion by state or federal statute? Which one would we violate if we discuss this openly? Which state or federal statute would we violate? As my general counsel, I'm asking you.
It's a written legal opinion. I think the law is very clear in the state of Michigan that client confidences can't be disclosed. Certainly not by me.
Madam Chair, if I may, is there any law or requirement that indicates that a written legal opinion cannot be done in open session?
That it cannot be?
Yeah.
Well, Section H says that it's exempt from being held in open session. Here's the point. I discuss with you information subject to the attorney-client privilege to the board in an open session. I am telling you, and I don't like to give legal opinions out front, in an open session, you are going to waive the attorney-client privilege. If that's this board's vote, that's fine. I'm not gonna do it.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed session to discuss this.
Support. Motion by.
Can I get a roll call vote on that?
Motion by Mr. Krasinski, seconded by Ms. Goodhue, to go into closed session. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Supervisor. Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bussino?
No.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no, and Supervisor Dunn.
Yes.
You can adjourn to closed session, or you
We
can
are
just.
adjourned to closed session.
You can do public comment.
You can do public.
I would alter my,
Right? Okay.
Okay.
I would alter my motion, wow. I would alter my motion to go into closed session after public comments.
Thank you.
I support.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion carries. We will now do public comments. This is on non-agenda items. If you want to speak, please come to the podium, state your name. Remember, you have a 3-minute time limit.
Mark Rabo, address is on file with the clerk. I'm going to give some generalities this evening because some of these things actually kick back. First of all, Ms. Smith, great job on the budget once again this year. Very interesting and clear information, so thank you. It was well put together. Mr. Van Tiffin, I really felt like we needed to actually call an ambulance for you because they threw you under the bus, the railroad tracks, the whole 9 yards. I have never seen this done before. Miss Dunn, you are the chief operating officer. How dare you throw these people under the bus? In a local media outlet that you stated, you would do whatever it took during your occupancy of office to build a library and acquire property for parks. Be more than happy to bring that back and put that in public eye. What tonight shows is the transparency that you guys have created, and not all of you. Those of that are guilty know exactly what I'm talking about. Those that have stood up and fought this battle, congratulations and thank you. But you've worked so hard at making the transparency so clouded, there's a thunderstorm outside and nobody can see what's going on. But it's clear what you've done. You need to clear this up. Stop playing the games with the clouds and the charades. It's getting old. We all sit here and listen to it and see it. $8.5 million you've moved in the budget for building authority for property acquisitions. Really? We have never had a fund balance go this low in 20 plus years that you've got budgeted for this coming year. I'm not sure which one's the bigger crook. The one getting ready to go to jail or things going on here? This is getting crazy. You guys are dropping fund balances and you're not even doing infrastructure items. How about taking care of the bridges? How about taking care of the roads that we're responsible for, that we, the township, have responsibility to? You want to build a library, they can't even get to it. How do you plan on that? Broughton Road doesn't go through. 25-mile road is closed. Card Road's been closed for 47 years. You've lived here how many years? Really? Step up to the plate. This is old.
Neil Kaffenberger. First of all, I want to say we had a public hearing. Public was not allowed to speak. You closed the hearing before public could speak. You violated my right there. And then you try to violate my right by going to closed session before you go into public comments. You know what? Let's get the act together. Let's get things done right. And let's get Macomb Township moving forward like it's supposed to be. Thank you.
Frank Cusmano, 16188 Jenny Drive. I'm going to talk about process. The question was raised why this issue on item 14 occurred. I'll make it very simple. It's a shrewd business decision by the library board. You could call it a hustle, a flim-flam, a scam, but it really isn't. It's transferring expense from one public entity to another. And it apparently was known before because in the materials that were provided, the issue came up in Clinton Township, so it's a known issue. Now, I've dealt with Mr. Van Tifflin in the past. I find him to be an honorable man, a trustworthy man. But I always have these questions about add-ons and change orders and really, and $800,000. The people in my neighborhood are not rich. They expect the trustees to be gatekeepers of the public trust. I've come up here repeatedly and said you should simply vote no. And what happened years ago at the college was a rhetorical question was posed by the president, Jim Jacobs. As public officials, you asked yourself, when will it end? When will the tuition increases end? And I responded to that question by saying it'll end when the majority of the board members vote no. That's when that's going to end. We're getting closer. Now this device that's been used in the past to avoid Open Meeting Act by generating a legal opinion as an excuse and an artifice for saying that it's exempt under FOIA, which I don't think it was. There's an exemption under FOIA for attorney-client privilege. That's the right of the client, which is the majority of this board to assert. The attorney can't assert it. The attorney can't waive it. Only the board can do so. The board is the client. It's happened before. It'll happen again. It'll continue to happen until this board, the majority at least, votes no. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Western. I was glad to hear a previous speaker refer to the fact that you did not have a public hearing on the budget. You closed a public hearing, but I guess I heard it the same way, and that the public was never invited to come to the podium and speak on the budget this evening. There does seem to be numerous times when you have trouble with that kind of procedure, parliamentary procedure, whatever you want to call it. Some items from the last meeting. During approval of the agenda, your parliamentary procedure seemed to go off the rails. Mr. Krasminski made a motion to have an item removed from the agenda. And then there was a support, and Mr. Krasminski called for a roll call vote. And that was totally ignored. And somebody else made another motion, and you started talking about the next motion, and then you just started discussing that topic. This does seem to happen with some frequency, and I'd like to ask you who is supposed to be the parliamentarian up there, or who is supposed to be the expert on parliamentary procedures to stop you from going off the rails, from stop you from doing the wrong thing, from stop you to having public hearings, which are not public hearings. Another item from the last meeting. Ms. Nevers, you began in your comments by introducing a letter from the former HR director, John Brogowitz. And to, I think, those of us in the audience, you seem to be summarizing his letter. I was curious about it, and when I got a copy of that letter, it was clear that you did not quote Mr. Brogowitz in your comments. You didn't use his words at all, and you misrepresented the conclusions. And you might want to put that letter next to your comments and perhaps have a talk with Mr. Brogowitz about how you represented his words. Also from the last board meeting, Ms. Nevers and Treasurer Goodhue revealed that they'd been meeting with Thomas Orty and select members of the Ethics Committee to refine the ethics ordinance so that Ms. Nevers, as she put it, could put her imprimatur on it. We don't need you to put your imprimatur on anything, but you seem to think that the way you went about that was perfectly fine and that there was no necessity to inform the rest of the board. In fact, you were highly critical of Trustee Tim Bussino, questioning the way that you went about this. Now, I'm not one to get all excited when some members of the community complain about the optics of an event. I think they're just using the latest buzzword. Throw in transparency and data points, and you have the trifecta of a political speech. However, Ms. Goodhue and Ms. Nevers, were you being coy when you presented that meeting? Because now I hear tonight that the meeting was held at one of your homes?
My home.
At Nancy Nevers' home?
Correct.
Well, perhaps in your comments you could tell us more about conducting
I shall.
township business at your home and how that is transparent and accessible to all, even the other members. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Christina Moody. I'm going to tread lightly on this one, but I know from the last meeting we were hoping to see on this one for the AFSCME grievance number 19-001. Was there going to be anything on the agenda coming up? Was there going to be any discussion on this any further? I know light got shed on it, then it was turned off, and now we're sitting here trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, it's been brought up in the papers and everything, from if you guys are going to get legal counsel, not getting legal counsel.
Did you have a question or a statement?
Well, we're, as a concerned citizen in Macomb Township, it was, where is this going? Are we gonna know about it? Are we not gonna know about it?
We do not interact with you. This is your opportunity to tell the board what your issue is.
The issue is gonna come down to that, from the understanding that has been put out there, is that there is a video. You guys went rounds last time and everything. I asked at the last, it was for the building meeting, for off-agenda items, out of respect for us as residents in this township, the courtesy to at least let us, you know, this has been brought to light that the township is possibly going to be sued. So if that's what's gonna happen, that's tax dollars that we spend for for the township, and without knowing what is going on, it just seems that we thought that it, honestly, I thought that it was gonna be on the agenda tonight. So I'm not sure if moving forward, is it gonna be on the next agenda then?
It will, under my comments, I'll try to answer your question.
So, I'm sorry, I don't understand, like.
Okay, when you come up here under public comments, it's your turn to comment. Not to ask, you can ask questions, I understand that, but it's your turn to comment. Then we're gonna have trustees' comments, then we're gonna have the treasurer's comments, the clerk's comments, the supervisor's comments.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Very well. We will move on to either closed session or comments from the board. I'm not sure which right now.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? Because we did opt forget about the public hearing for the budget. Is there a way to go back at this time and ask them to come up and give their comments?
I opened the public hearing.
I know, but we didn't ask for their comments at that time. I don't know if it's legal to do that, to go back or not.
Mr. Assorti, I'm gonna ask you.
Sure, you can open it back up.
All right, fine. We'll open up the public hearing for the budget. Is there anyone that wants to speak on the budget?
Frank Kuzmano, 16188 Jenny Drive. Thank you, because you've just avoided an Open Meetings Act violation and possibly nullifying the entire budget. So thank you, Ms. Goodhue, for having the conscientious decision to make your motion.
Anyone else?
With that being opened up, I'd like to get clarification on the Building Authority Fund and what your projections actually are and why we are spending $8.3 million this next budget year.
That's for the public safety building being built.
Okay,
That's the only
so
thing
that
that
is
that
the only
building-
reason we're dropping that budget in that.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify, because
That's
there's a
the
lot
only
of people
expense.
questioning it, especially, and I know you do a fantastic job, so there's no questions there, asking the board to make sure, because there's a lot of expense being spent on properties that we shouldn't be. So that's why we wanted to clarify that. So, thank you, Stacy, very much.
Anyone else?
Neil Kaffenberger, my question was just answered, my main question, but really with the attorney's budget and all that stuff, I understand he's kind of prepping for 5 lawsuits and all that stuff, but you know what? I think it's a little too much. I think you just knock it down to maybe like 3, drop it down 100,000, and then if he needs more, then he can ask for it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I said 5, I think I said 50,000. I don't know if did I say 5?
You said 5 at 50,000.
Then I apologize. At 50,000, there's $150,000 left, right, Stacy? We're at 250 total?
Yeah, 250.
250 total with 100. So I apologize if I said 5. My calculation is 3 at $50,000. So another $150,000 for 3 cases.
Thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Anyone else? Very well, I will close the public hearing on the budget. Thank you, Stacy. All right, we're gonna do trustees' comments. Trustees' comments.
All right. Madam Chair, if I may address Mrs., is it Miss or Mrs. Weston? Anyway, I'm just going to start by saying no good deed ever goes unpunished. And let me tell you how this all came about. And Mr. Gilios is in the audience, so he can attest to the veracity of what I'm saying. He asked me if we could have a meeting to discuss an issue about the township. I said, absolutely. And we met, and because he and I are involved with the ethics ordinance, just like anybody else here could have jumped in, and as Ms. Posey pointed out when she was looking at funding for the sidewalks. So anyway, he brought information to that meeting along with the other things he wanted to discuss. Am I right, Jim? Okay. And so in the discussion of it, I said, I would like to bring together, since I knew Ms. Goodhue had issues with the municipal civil infraction, because township employees have a remedy. They are in the union. And because they're in the union, there's a process. So the ordinance is going to be directed at the board and the deputies. So she had some serious concerns. And so I said to Jim, I would like to bring Karen into this discussion, since she and I had met quite a few times, and he agreed that would be good. And so then he said, well, where should we meet? I said, I don't know, anywhere. I said, could be at my house. As innocent as that, I'm now being fly-specked because, shame on me, I wanted to have open communication with somebody who comes to the podium with questions. Okay, then Mr. Gilio said, well, I don't know if it was he or I that said, well, let's open it to the other committee members in case they're available and can come. Hence, Mr. Sokol came. And also Rich Mallory, who was Karen's choice for committee. It was an extremely positive meeting. Oh, and by the way, I sent several texts to Mr. Bussenow because I know he was upset about it not having the vote. And we went back and forth with text, and he didn't seem to have a huge issue. But I don't know, maybe you did and I misread it, I don't know. I know you wanted it voted on, however, it isn't quite there. I'm sorry, but it isn't, there are issues. So after that meeting was over, we decided we should have one more meeting, bringing in Mr. Assorti. And then I thought, well, maybe it shouldn't be at my house with Mr. Assorti, so we are having the meeting Friday at 10 o'clock in the conference room here. Again, was nothing nefarious about it. It was just something that happened out of the meeting that Mr. Gilios and I had. Again, I'm always open to anybody that wants to meet with me. Okay, so that being said, I've had some other, does that answer your question? Well, I hope it did anyway. Okay, now I've had other thoughts and other observations. So if I may, I would like to address last week's comments by our clerk, who stated, and I quote, "I was elected to represent the Macomb Township residents and employees." I suggest perhaps that this might have been a misspeak, or perhaps I've done this myself, an inartful choice of words. Excuse me. As I understand it, the elected board member's duty by law is to the township taxpayers and residents. It is my understanding the employees are, by law and contract, represented by their bargaining units, and in rare cases, they may be represented by themselves individually. Over and over again, I have heard the HR/legal counsel's position contains an inherent conflict, but I suggest that if there are board members who sincerely believe they were elected to represent the employees at any level, that is where a true conflict lies, because that's not what we were elected to do. The oaths that we swear as board members create in us a fiduciary responsibility to township residents and taxpayers. Again, as I see it, the employees select their own representation through the various unions they have chosen. Their union representative has fiduciary duties to their members. I have never, and probably will never hear, a union official state that they were elected to represent the residents of the township. In fact, one union official was recently removed by membership, reportedly for being too friendly with the township's bargaining team. The members apparently felt that he misunderstood who he was elected to represent. I believe if you are concerned with conflicts, look no further than to any board member who may misunderstand what their duties actually are and to whom they are owed. No one can serve two masters. This is not to say that we, as management, should not attempt to cooperate with our employees. Of course we should. I have always maintained an open door policy to any employee, and I will continue to do so. Nevertheless, we board members must all recognize what our duties are and to whom our allegiance is ultimately owed. In my opinion, that would avoid conflicts. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Madam Chair, I also want to speak, excuse me, about the ethics ordinance. This week, I've gotten a lot of lectures from people not so close to me and people very close to me, how all of a sudden I'm supposed to be a team player at the midnight hour with this ethics ordinance. And I've talked about consistency before and fairness. It's something that as educators, we are taught to be consistent and to be fair. I have been asked to vote on major things on this board. Probably one of the most controversial things that we voted on this board, I had 3 hours notice with a contract. And I think we all know what we're talking about there. Now after 20 months, this board says, we just really, I shouldn't say the board, I hate when people talk in generalities. There are some members of the board who are saying, Tim, it's not perfect. We have it, 20 months isn't long enough. And, I remember on May 8th when we voted to vote tonight, I said we have 6 weeks now, 6 weeks to figure this out. And all of a sudden there was a meeting that Thursday. I'm sorry, I still was not invited to that meeting. I do have coaching responsibilities. That day, I could have made it. I still was not invited to go to that meeting. And again, I've been asked to vote on $1 million here when it's been brought up right at the meeting. I've been asked to vote on important contracts when I've only had 3 hours. And 20 months isn't enough time? I'm sorry. We are not being consistent. And I'll bring it up tonight. When we did not vote on the library, there was insistence to make sure that that was going to be put on the next meeting. I still have not heard a date for this ethics ordinance to be voted on with this postponement. There is not consistency up here. There's not fairness. I think we've looked at this every which way. I think this is a stall tactic, again. Okay, I look forward to this meeting. And when you talk about consistency, I remember when I had a meeting at the library and let the public know. And we had members of this board up here and members of the employees sitting in the crowd and residents sitting in the crowd. I got chastised for having that meeting. And then in March of 2018, there was a resolution passed by this board because I sent a letter to the governor asking for Mr. Fucci to be removed. And there was a resolution that without board action, nobody could officially represent this board. And all due respect to Mr. Gellios, we get along great and we talk great. He did use a terminology today that, well, if the board beckoned me, I had to answer. Who said that Karen Goodhue and Nancy Nevers had the right to hold a meeting about the ethics ordinance and make it seem like they were representing this board? That goes completely against the resolution that was passed in March 2018. This board needs to get consistent. It needs to get fair, okay? I would like to know a date that this ethics ordinance is going to be passed.
Anyone else? Anyone else? No? Very well. Treasurer's comments?
Yes. July the 1st is the scheduled date for the summer tax bill to come out. And we have had requests by many residents asking for the ability to make partial payments or reoccurring payments. So on our online program. And they did not offer that before, but we did work with our provider, and that will be available to our residents for this summer payment. The summer tax bill is typically a little bit the larger bill of the year, and to give the residents the ability to make partial payments and reoccurring payments is a great benefit to them. So if there are any questions, because it is new to our department too, the screen looks a little bit different. If there are any questions or if you have any problems with that, please call the treasurer's office. And at this time, I don't think that Ms. Nevers or I represented ourselves as a board. We went there to find out information and questions, and this is a personal invitation, Mr. Busno, that 10 o'clock Friday morning, you are invited to the ethics meeting that we're going to have. Thank you.
Clerk's comments.
I just wanted to inform everybody that as a convenience to Macomb Township residents, Macomb County Clerk Fred Miller will be offering a mobile office here in the lobby of Town Hall on Thursday, July 11th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The mobile office will feature many clerk's office and register of deeds services without having to drive to the downtown Mount Clemens office. These services will include CPL application renewal, marriage license application, business registration, copy of birth, death, marriage, or business records, notary application, real estate recordings, real estate documents, certified copies, circuit court documents, veteran photo ID cards, and voter registration. So that's a convenience I hope that our residents will use in an effort to avoid going downtown. Also, just to respond to Mrs. Nevers about the comment elected to represent the residents and the employees, I'll just use a word that's been used around here, semantics. Under no terms do I believe that I represent the employees. We all know that they belong to a collective bargaining agreement. I am, however, a department head. I do represent the clerk's office employees in their voices up here as a department head. And if there's an issue with an employee and I feel that something's not going the way it should be in the town hall, I will speak accordingly. I didn't use the word as representing them as a union representative or anything of that nature. Clearly just voicing my opinion on to how the employees have expressed what's going on in town hall. Also, you made the comment that no one can serve as two masters, and I do agree with that, hence my continuous argument that HR and legal shouldn't be combined. That's all.
This has been brought up this evening, and I would like to address it under my comments. This is in regards to the outside legal that the board directed me to contact. Trustee Smith spoke to 4 attorneys that she mentioned at the last board meeting. Only 2 of the attorneys mentioned at that meeting were part of the resumes that Ms. Smith supplied to me. 2 other resumes were delivered to me as possibilities. Of the 4 supplied, 1 declined, and the other I have contacted. This individual has requested information. It was sent to him, and I am awaiting his response. The other comment I had is that Macomb Township has purchased Wade's Nursery, consisting of 18 acres of land as well as several outbuildings. This property will be used for facilities and grounds, equipment and supplies, and also possibility of more sports fields, which Mr. DeCaro has indicated is desperately needed. The sellers have 120 days to vacate the property and to liquidate their inventory and get rid of their machinery and equipment. More will be coming in that as we solidify our plans for that particular area. That's all I have. Right now, we need a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to go into closed session. Ms. Posey, would you call the roll?
Trustee Krasinski?
Yes.
Treasurer Goodhue?
Yes.
Trustee Bustineau?
No.
Trustee Nevers?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Clerk Posey, no. Supervisor Dunn?
Yes. Motion carries. We have returned from closed session. There was one item discussed. That was a written legal opinion regarding an employee's request for reimbursement. Are there any motions?
Madam Chair, this was for informational purposes only.
Very well. That concludes the business for this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Krasinski,
Support.
supported by Ms. Goodhue, to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed by saying nay. That motion carries and we are adjourned.